Thanks for joining us. Police tonight are still searching for a 29-year-old husband and father who went missing nearly a week ago. Andrew Sutton was last seen in the Coxwell and Danforth area where he lives with his wife, Maddie. Ali Chiasson sat down with her today.
She's definitely missing her dad. She's calling his name a lot and checking for him.
Hi, Dada.
We miss him.
Bye.
I don't think she really understands what's happening, but he was there one day and then he wasn't.
29-year-old Andrew Sutton has been missing since February 16th. His face adorns missing person posters all over the city. I sat down with his wife, Maddie, today, who tells me he left their apartment around 4 o'clock in the morning, telling her he would be staying at his sister's. But when he never turned up, they knew something wasn't right.
We had an argument and he left the apartment, which is not usual for him. And I think he might be having a mental health crisis. He wouldn't leave Daisy normally like this.
That day, they mobilized, calling the police. Soon, they were printing posters and knocking on doors looking for ring camera footage, which they found. Maddie says that's him walking across Danforth not long after he left.
How have the police been?
Been really great. They've been really searching really hard, and they've been on foot. They've been searching all the areas that he was last seen in,
including the area of the Bloor Viaduct. But they have found no sign of Andrew. What doesn't help is that his phone hasn't been pinging and no transactions have been made on any of his cards.
He did have a backpack and then he lost it, it looks like, in footage. So I'm hoping his wallet was in there and that's why he's not. Andrew is a bartender, so he did have cash on him. So that's what we're just holding on to. And his phone has not been on since.
Maddie is holding on to hope with the help of the Coxwell-Danforth community.
I've had people offer to babysit, to bring me food and groceries, and just to be out there searching for Andrew. Like, that's all we really want, is everyone searching for Andrew, looking for him. If you've seen him, please, please, please call it in. If he sees this, I want him to know that we love him and that I'd do anything in the world for him. That Daisy misses him. And I just want him to come home.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A man has pleaded guilty to first-degree murder for stabbing a woman at High Park Station in December 2022. Neng Jiajin admitted today, to everyone's surprise, that he had indeed killed the 31-year-old Vanessa Kapruska. Jin also pleaded guilty to attempted murder for stabbing another woman who survived. Police say the attack was random and he did not know the victims. A sentencing hearing has now been scheduled to take place March 14. There's only 2 more days of campaigning before Ontario gets to vote. Today, PC leader Doug Ford released his party's election platform. It promises billions of dollars in spending, but doesn't quite show how a PC government would pay for it all. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has that story.
Doug Ford showcased another endorsement by a union for trades workers, once again promising to protect workers against potential U.S. tariffs.
We need to be ready for anything. We're going to be ready for everything.
Ford also released his party's platform. First up, it looks at fighting tariffs. There's a new Protect Ontario account with $5 billion to support major industries and workers if they happen, along with billions more to help businesses. The words protect or protecting appear more than 80 times. The platform also promises to get rid of minimum pricing for hard alcohol at the LCBO.
That's the taxpayers' money. It's putting money back into people's pockets. So under the Liberals, and I got to explain to the folks in this room here, you know, they would say you have to charge this much, because if you don't charge this much, then people will drink too much. That's the biggest joke I've ever heard. They don't do it in Alberta. They don't do it in Quebec.
It's from a government that years ago promised buck a beer, then opened up where people could buy beer, wine, and coolers. The PCs also promise to open HOV lanes to all vehicles in off-peak hours as a way to fight gridlock. But it's not clear how Ford would pay for the promises. He was asked whether it means no balanced budget.
You know, if the tariffs hit us, yes, we won't be able to balance, because it's just similar to the pandemic.
It's a stay the course platform. It's a government that doesn't feel that people are actually watching very closely how it's spending money, so it doesn't feel the need to to cost anything out.
The Liberal leader was out campaigning with a photo op at a grocery store with a candidate in what's expected to be a tight riding, Toronto St. Paul's. Her reaction to the platform?
I've never seen one to spend so much and do so little for the real people. He hasn't costed the fantasy tunnel, and he doesn't tell us how he's going to pay for it either.
The NDP leader was in Windsor, fighting against the PCs for seats there. Her response to Ford getting rid of minimum liquor pricing?
I talked to a whole bunch of people over this election. Not one person has raised that with me. You know what people want? They want us to address the rising cost of food, the rent increases.
All the major parties have now released their election platforms. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
More than a week after the last big blast of snow, some streets and sidewalks still pose problems for those trying to get around. And now, with the provincial election just days away, advocates say ensuring accessibility to voting centres needs to be a top priority. Tyler Cheese has more.
Voting is one of the few things that we can do. It's supposed to be an equalizer, but there's so many barriers.
Jennifer Jewell says it took her around 40 minutes to get from where she lives near Church and Carleton Streets to the Wellesley Community Centre on Sherbourne Street. The journey to her early voting station happened on Friday, draining the battery of her electric wheelchair.
That took all my battery. I had a full battery and it burnt the whole thing, so I couldn't come home. So I had to have a friend, he transferred me money so I can get an Uber.
She's worried that other people with disabilities will face similar struggles if the excess snow in Toronto isn't fully cleared by Election Day.
They need to make sure that the sidewalks, from transit to the polling stations, are accessible. They need to do a better job. I think they need to get called out on their definition of accessibility.
In a statement to CBC Toronto, the chair of the AODA Alliance questioned why an election was called at this time of year, writing, "The decision to call a Snap Ontario election in snowy February has created new serious accessibility barriers for voters with disabilities." Other disability advocates are calling on the city and Elections Ontario to make sure everybody can access the polls.
Having access to a voting center is your civic right. You have a civic duty to vote, whether you choose to exercise that or not. And, the inability to access that, and further, the ability or the inability to access it through the main door, similar to anybody else.
He's also reminding poll workers that disabilities come in many forms and that everyone needs to be accommodated.
Show up with empathy, show up with respect, show up with the intention for that individual to allow them to speak, act, and cast their vote as anybody else would.
In a statement, the City of Toronto says it's working to ensure access to voting places for the election, and staff has been directed to prioritize the areas around voting places for cleanup. Elections Ontario has also told CBC Toronto that polling stations will be accessible for all voters. That includes assistive voting technology, which is available at local election offices every day leading up to and including Election Day. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
And snow and ice have also been blocking TTC riders and holding up service for more than a week now. And today, the TTC was told that its extreme weather response isn't good enough. A municipal council urgent motion carried late this afternoon is asking the transit agency to find a way to do better. Brittany Billette has more.
Across the city, TTC riders are climbing up and down hills of snow as part of their commute.
I have arthritis and bad knees, and I have dogs with me trying to get over, and I can't. I'm scared I'll fall and can't get back up.
I think by now they should have cleared all this.
I've also slipped a couple of times due to black ice, but yeah, it's something that's out of our control, and hopefully it gets better over time.
On Monday, the TTC assessed what it could do to respond to future snowfalls faster, an urgent motion put forward by Councillor Josh Matlow, seconded by TTC Chair Jamal Myers.
I don't believe that Torontonians should have to climb a mountain of snow when they're simply trying to get to their TTC stop to get to work or get to school on time.
Our system needs to be better prepared for snow.
It's been over a week since the city was hammered by back-to-back snowstorms. Some areas got up to 50 centimeters. Parts of the subway were shut down, 56 bus stops were out of service, and streetcars were delayed.
Good morning.
The TTC CEO acknowledged Monday that change is necessary, but called the situation unprecedented and defended his staff.
Our overtime costs, we haven't figured that out yet, but it's going to be in the high hundreds of thousands. So that means we're doing a lot of stuff.
Advocates say the TTC's response has been unacceptable and dangerous.
It's a real accessibility issue. It's a real issue for safety. People should not be waiting several days to see their bus, streetcar, or Wheel-Trans stop cleared of snow.
The motion is requesting 3 things. First, for the TTC to improve service function during extreme weather, including on Line 1 and 2. Second, to work with the city and accessibility groups to develop service standards for snow clearing on surface routes. And 3, to look at whether the city should increase fines for cars blocking TTC routes. Right now, it's set at $200. The city says it prioritizes snow removal on main streets with transit routes to ensure safety and accessibility. So far, crews have removed nearly 105,000 tons of snow since last Wednesday.
I have asked the city staff to step up in the efforts on the sidewalk, do it well, and it's not done as well as it can be.
The mayor and the city says it's an all-hands-on-deck operation, especially since warmer temperatures this week will soon melt the snow. Just before the forecast drops again, it threatens to turn the city's biggest problem into an icy one. Brittany Blatt, CBC News, Toronto.
Keeping with this theme now, while salt is an effective tool to help melt snow and ice, conservation officials are sounding the alarm about an increasing trend of chloride in local waterways, which is harming local aquatic life. The biggest culprit, they say, is, well, road salt. Farah Morali has that story.
We're just going to go down Creekside to take a measurement with our multi-parameter sonde.
Calvin Hitch edges his way down to the frozen banks of Mimico Creek. He's testing just how much salt is in the water. His probe connects by Bluetooth to this phone.
All right.
The Toronto and Region Conservation Authority says when it comes to salt levels, things aren't trending in the right direction.
We look kind of longer term, and what we're seeing is that of the 47 stations across our jurisdiction, 36 of them are showing increasing trends in chloride over time. And that's a big concern.
One of the main sources of chloride, road salt, spread over streets in winter.
Just like any chemical, too much salt can be toxic. So animals, plants, we all have tolerances to different salinity ranges, and we can only tolerate so much.
Experts say chloride levels for aquatic life should be less than 120 milligrams per liter. Above 640, it hits what's called acute toxicity. The highest peak in a water body measured last year was at Etobicoke Creek, measuring more than 10,000 milligrams a liter, followed by the Don River at more than 7,500. This TMU lab is looking at salt's impact on tiny zooplankton by exposing them to different chloride concentrations.
When you hit 640 milligrams per liter, species die.
Claire Oswald says they're seeing a decrease in zooplankton in streams and lakes.
This can have knock-on effects up the food chain because zooplankton are really important food sources for fish and juvenile amphibians.
Some of the worst samples coming right off the road into soil before making its way into streams.
Ocean water is around 19,000 milligrams per liter of chloride. So we regularly are measuring, around that level or higher if we're measuring runoff coming right off the landscape.
The solution, using less salt. The City of Toronto says it's doing just that with its salt management plan.
We're very careful, diligent, and we monitor our salt application very carefully.
And city roads aren't the only places being salted. Contractors clear private properties.
All of my trucks now have salt counters on them, so I know to the pound how much salt I just put down on that property, and I'm making sure it goes along with what is the recommended amount of salt.
This company says they follow smart salt practices. Their challenge, they're on the hook when it comes to liability for slips, falls, or accidents on properties they're hired to clear.
We are salting so much because of liability.
AG is part of a group calling for legislation to provide liability protection for operators who follow smart salt practices. The province didn't respond to requests for comment on whether it'd consider that.
This is water that other species rely on, but we also rely on it too.
Back at Mimico Creek, this team hopes that message will resonate with those salting this season. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. A shared living site for seniors who need support but don't require long-term care officially opened in Toronto's East End this afternoon.
They don't necessarily need a lot of medical supports, but they can't maintain a home anymore. And so they're designed for those individuals to be able to still live in the community and maintain a high level of independence with supports for those tasks that they can't do on their own.
The 9-unit affordable housing site on Queen Street East will provide seniors with round-the-clock personal support services. The $2.3 million housing project will be operated in partnership with Michael Garron Hospital. The idea is to take pressure off hospitals and long-term care facilities by offering housing with care. A new TVO documentary aims to highlight how Jamaican music became a pivotal and unexpected part of Canadian culture. Play It Loud, How Toronto Got Soul focuses on the struggles and triumphs of Jay Douglas, a Jamaican-Canadian singer who became a significant figure on the global music stage, despite going largely unnoticed at home in Toronto. Now, decades later, Douglas is still carrying the torch for Jamaican music. Talia Ricci has more.
Play It Loud, it's all about truth and the music. As a young man coming from Jamaica and the history of the great musicians that came from Jamaica in those early years. I'm going to take you on a journey.
Tell me a little bit about this documentary and how it came together.
It came together by the producer Andrew Munger and the director Graham Matheson. It took 3 years for it to complete. They took me to Jamaica. It's going to be shown at Central Tech High School, where I went to school. And it will be shown at the Jamaica Canadian Association.
It started with the band, the Cougars, which I started many, many years ago in the 60s. We didn't have a vocalist, we didn't have a singer, we had instrumentalists. We heard about Jay. He was going to Central Tech. So one Sunday we drove by and they were playing football out in the field, and we called to him over the fence, said, Jay, come down to the Whiff Club and for an audition. And he did. And that's, he joined the band. We kept him on as a singer. The history of Jamaican artists in Toronto, it wasn't appreciated, let's put it that way. We had a hard time getting record contracts. We never got a recording contract. We were basically neglected. But we persevered, and more and more Jamaican artists started migrating to Toronto.
What excites you the most about sharing the history of Little Jamaica with people who might not otherwise know about it?
My excitement behind the documentary merely rests on the fact that people are not aware of the history of what was happening in the Jamaican diaspora in Toronto. The documentary really exposes all these pitfalls and neglect that we suffered. I'm really happy that the public, general public, especially the young people today, have a sense of the history of what we endured. We've spoken to a lot of people who've seen the documentary and go like, wow, we never knew this was the way Toronto was.
Who am I? I'm Jay Douglas. Let's get into this, man.
So what do you hope people take away from the documentary? Like, how do you want them to feel, or what do you want them to talk about after?
We want them to talk about how much we live in truth, the spirit of truth. And thank God we're starting to document in Canada, Toronto, because in the early years we didn't do as much. Still have a lot of work, but the documentary tells everything, working together, sharing the good news about all the great artists that came from Jamaica and helped to make Toronto get soul. That's how Toronto got its soul. And I'm a part of it, and I'm grateful for this. There's some good, bright lights shining ahead for the neighbor.
Another great documentary for sure. Now, the Toronto Zoo is mourning the death of a baby Rusa named Bucky, who was injured on Saturday at the zoo. According to a Facebook post by the zoo, initial investigations found that human error could have played a role in Bucky's death. The 17-year-old Sulawesi babirusa was fatally injured after gaining access to a space occupied by a male greater one-horned rhinoceros. The zoo said that Bucky held a special place in their hearts and was truly one of a kind. Now, time for us to take a short break. We'll be right back. Colette is with us for the forecast. Colette, I said to Chris Potter a couple of days ago, the best two words in the whole English language were milder conditions.
Yes, especially when it's the end of February, right? And you get to hear that phrase.
Of course.
Yeah, so it has been, a matter of snow everywhere, and now it's a little bit more of water, snow everywhere. We haven't gotten rid of all of it, but about 15 centimeters melted off from some of these piles and these snowbanks, and so that will continue. Even in the overnight hours, our temperature's not really dipping below freezing, so we're still getting some of that melting. And as you look at the jet stream here, these upper winds, and we have, you can't call it zonal, there are some kinks in that jet stream from Vancouver stretching across here towards the Great Lakes, but nothing too severe. It is enough that it's kind of pulling some energy towards us. So we'll have little systems kind of coming through here during the week, nothing terribly strong, and the Arctic air, which is very important, staying to the north, thus the milder conditions that we have. Some of the daytime highs from today, Hamilton, 2 reporting stations there, and actually we were up to 9 degrees, depending which one you pick. This one, of course, 7 degrees. Same thing for Pearson, Windsor, 7 degrees. Some really incredible readings. Haven't seen some of these readings since December, but keeping in mind, a few days before the end of December, Toronto was up to 10 degrees. So it's hard to beat that. But as we are into 2025, it's the mildest air that we've experienced so far in this younger year that we're into. So here we go as we look ahead. Some fog development tonight, certainly possible as we still have those mild temperatures and the cooler lakes. We've got a good portion of Lake Erie that's frozen over, and this kind of plays into it. And we do get that fog into the morning as well, especially with the winds lighter. They've been, of course, very, very strong, especially in the Niagara region and up the Bruce Peninsula today, and those are backing off. Some light showers or some drizzle, certainly possible in the GTA. On Tuesday, a better chance of that into the Niagara region, and then we get a bit of a reprieve behind that. And then on Wednesday, we will have another system that's going to move in. The tracking of this one is going to be so important. It looks like right now a little bit of light, wet snow coming back into the GTA, but wet because of the mild temperatures that we'll experience. A look at those winds backing off, the overnight temperatures staying above freezing, and then just giving you an idea of how it's still mild over the next few days with those daytime highs.
Mild over the next few days. Thank you so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
That's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching us. Have a great night.